Okay guys, welcome to the Hrid analysis, units, and comparisons. This is strictly going to be, as most of them have been, a take on the new Legendary Hero released and how he compares to current units in the 3 and 4 star pool. This is what I normally do to give you guys a better idea of whether the unit himself is viable. I'm already going to tell you, he's like, all Legendary Heroes are good in their own way. So, you know, don't come off entering this video thinking that I'm going to convince you that certain characters are just better than Hrid. No, that's not the case. It's more like looking at an alternative option should you not A, get Hrid, or feel like you need a red cav on your team. The thing is, red cavs are very populated as a unit class, and that means you're going to have plenty of other options, and some of them are better in a specific context. So yeah. For those of you that are on Twitch, feel free to say hello to the guys on YouTube. Comments as well. If you're on the YouTube community, you can communicate with the guys on Twitch. They check out the video too. They see you say hi, and I check out the comments as well. And I love to see that sort of community engagement. So let's move forward, shall we? Quick look at Hrid himself, first of all. He has, as I predicted in my impressions, he has low speed, high attack with a super boon, by the way, so that goes up to 41, which makes him a really high attack stat unit. He's got exceptional defense and decent res and HP as well. So he's a really like min-maxed Cavalier, but he does have 57 BST, so he's not exactly like 180 BST. Like, he doesn't have as much stats as maybe an armor unit does, but he does have the mobility, and that's really important with ether raids nowadays. And that already sets him really apart from a lot of other like armors, for instance, like ether raids. Like, Hrid's gonna be better than, like, say, Legendary Tiki, hands down, because mobility is king. Gale Force sweeps. You're gonna see tons of ether raid videos, guides, and I'm gonna talk about this sort of thing coming up in hopefully within a week. I'm working on the ether raids offense and defense stuff, so you guys can definitely look forward to it. I know there's been high demand for it, and I really want to put it together for you guys and make it decent, good, plus some gameplay and explanations on why certain things work. Anyways, let's jump into some of the comparisons. So first up, what you kind of want to use Hrid as is like a unit that debuffs the other team, whether you use ploys on somebody else or you rely on his freezing seal. Once you debuff a unit, he has guaranteed doubles and the enemy cannot double. So he has a breaker against anything that is debuffed in any fashion, which is panic or just like ploys and chills and such, which makes him not super consistent. And that's why I think this is his weakness, because unless you have like a Versa who on his team, which would be a good candidate, by the way, a Versa on the team with a Versus Knight maybe, or if you have Gunthra using Chilling Seal, or you're just, maybe you have a good ployer and you can predict AI to hit, it's not going to be super consistent that you can always line up this sort of engagement. And that's why I think Hrid will falter a little bit in practicality, but on paper he looks really good. In the one sort of like situation, yeah, you set up your smokes, you set up your seals, and you play aggressively, and I think that's a good way to do it, but it's not always gonna work, and that's why I'm kind of hesitant to really push Hrid forward, because he relies on these specific circumstances instead of always being consistent. So anyways, if you want to play him, just as I mentioned, as a Gale Force user, which you could, by the way, if you combine Heavy Blade and use something like Gale Force, you can definitely use him that way due to his really good attack stat. And yeah, he's going to have guaranteed doubles. The enemy hits him back and he gets it off that way. Keep in mind though, you wouldn't be able to get a turn 1 Gale Force if you attacked into a unit that couldn't counterattack him back, which is his weakness because he doesn't have CDR. To do that, you would need to use something like Heavy Blade in the A slot and Quick Impulse. So that's his only way of doing that. Now, on the other hand, on the left side, we got my first comparison, which is going to be Elwood. And Elwood is an interesting candidate here because he's an oldie, but he's a really good oldie. He has Heavy Blade in his weapon. His attack stat is not the highest, and his speed stat is also not the highest. But the thing you have working for him here is Heavy Blade in his weapon. That opens up Fury to be used in his A slot, which gives him that necessary attack boost. You could use Darting Blow, you could use Death Blow, you could use Swift Sparrow, for instance, to give him those stats that he needs. And then with that, you can pretty much go into your fights and get your Gale Forces off. You can use Quick Impulse in the Seal rather than using like Heavy Blade in the A, and he gets it against range units, he gets it against melee units as well, and that makes them really good. Now, 53 attack may not look too good, but the thing is, now with ether raids being so important to use Gale Force Cavaliers, it's usually good enough. It's actually good enough. 59 is what you reach with Honed Cavalry, which you definitely should give him, or an attack tactic, for instance. And yeah, like, and speed tactic, attack tactic, hone cav, these buffs really help him, and merges as well. Merges brings him to like 40 speed and 63 attack almost. So he's consistently going to do this, and I think that's where the consistency comes from. Elwood has that consistency. Now, if for some reason you weren't able to actually, like on Hrid, if you were to engage on a unit and you couldn't debuff the other units, Hrid is also more susceptible to getting wrecked on the enemy phase. If for some reason Reinhardt's like in a corner and, well, maybe not Reinhardt, but let's say like Lynn or something. You know, somebody's in the corner, you couldn't smoke him, you couldn't debuff him, they come onto Hrid and they're very likely going to quad him because of his terrible speed, and that's a big detriment because you could employ it. On the other hand, Elwood has that really good res stat, like really good res stat. So if you did leave like a mage in the corner, Elwood could avoid a double and maybe even survive that stuff. Like 39 res on enemy phase is nothing to just ignore. Like Elwood can definitely take a lot of stuff on enemy phase that maybe some of these units couldn't. And that's one advantage you may have over Hrid to consider. Okay, anyways, that's the aggressive playstyle that both Hrid and Elwood could do. Let's move on. Next up is more of a defensive playstyle that you can also kind of replicate with Hrid. So Hrid, he can be played on enemy phase just as well as he could on player phase if you don't want to use something like Gale Force. And the thing is, he's got distant counter on A, right? So what do we have as an F2P option with distant counter? Well, we have Xander. Simple as that, really. Xander trades distant counter on the A slot for it being built into his weapon. And you can basically give Xander an A skill, which makes up for the difference in stats there. And yeah, you can just give him mirror stats, and he gets a pretty comparable stat spread. I mean, low speed. You got attack defense bond, quick riposte with bonfire. It's almost like the same unit. Xander's got a bit more HP. One thing to consider though is you'd actually have maybe even less of a damage output with Hrid compared to Xander here, because if Xander was to get doubled, you would proc off a bonfire. But if Hrid denies a double due to his debuff effect, he wouldn't proc off a bonfire. So you would be forced to use something like Moonbow or Glimmer for consistent special damage. You'd be denying your own special by not being able to double back. And this is a little bit, again, like an inconsistency thing. So that's not really that good. What Hrid excels in here is being more tankier than Xander in this case, because you could deny that double. So he doesn't get hit as often, but he's not going to output as much damage as Xander does because of Mirror Stance giving an extra 4 attack and Attack Defense Bond giving that extra 5 attack. Yeah, the thing is, of course, that Hrid is going to have more attack because if you give him the same kind of idea, like Attack Defense Bond, a super attack boon, he's going to have comparable damage, but again, that bonfire makes up that difference there. So, as I said, when it's such a comparable playstyle, you don't really need Hrid in this scenario, where Xander could be merged up for just using like Rails, for instance. That whole meme about Faye using Xander merges does have some viability. Xander's a good PvE unit. I wouldn't really use him in something like Ether Raids. I'd use him in Arena Assault. He's not really that good in Arena, but he does have a place because cavalries are always pretty good. Better than armors, at least. Okay, moving on. So, if you don't have Elwood, but if you have this guy lying around, he's a good alternative to that. Yeah, it's like weird that most people laugh at like Seth being a thing, but honestly, Slaying Edge with Speed Refine, Fury, and Heavy Blade, especially if you give him either merges or Hone Cav, again, becomes decent enough that you're going to proc off that Gale Force, the Heavy Blade Gale Force. And he's got good speed, and he's got decent attack to do it. So yeah, there's your dude. He doesn't need Quick Impulse. He's pretty much always getting Gale Forces on every engagement. Fury Desperation, Savage Blow to secure more kills. Ideally, you could even use Attack Smoke if you're worried about Gale Force consistency, or Defense Smoke if you did, for whatever reason, have it, but Savage Blow does just fine. Yeah, simple, effective build. Nothing really more to it. His low HP actually helps him a bit. You could set up even Wings of Mercy just by a couple of Gale Force engagements, chip damage enough through Fury, bring him to 50%, and boom, you got yourself an easy Wings of Mercy Dancers coming in. Really simple, clean build. Finally, another tanky build by a unit completely forgotten, I would assume, but I'm not going to completely forget about him. So, just like Xander previously, if you didn't want to take advantage of the whole distant counter thing that Hrid has going for him, we got this guy lying around. Yeah, Toilet Knight over there. The thing that's really cool about Toilet Knight is he's got 50 HP. He's got a good defense stat, and his low speed helps him out to get doubled, which you want when you use something like Slaying Edge and Ignis. If he gets doubled, he procs off an Ignis, off his quick riposte, attack defense bond. You're hitting basically for 32, almost 40 damage off of Ignis from no merges on stall. If you attack into stall, he's like a walking red Lucas horse, you know, like this is what you can do with this guy. And like the C skill can be Panic Ploy off of like Garen, for instance. And yeah, due to his high HP, he can be more than just that. It's a shame there's no infantry pulse for horses or something, because he'd probably be one of the best candidates for it, but he could be a good Panic Ploy user. And yeah, that's definitely what you could do with stall. I mean, his attack stat isn't too great, but he is a good wall. And even like somebody like Seth could do that, but I just looked at stall and just said like that's supreme bulk, and you can pretty much accomplish that thing. So that pretty much covers up all my comparisons for Hrid and some of the 3 and 4 star calves we have in the pool. Definitely consider using them if you're looking for some sort of role needed as a red cav. Most people should have Xander and probably not merge up, but at least like upgraded. And yeah, he gets the job done as a distant counter user. If you're looking for a tanky red cav, try out Seth or Stall. They won't disappoint you. And yeah, Elwood as probably a supreme Gale Force user. I highly recommend him as well. In fact, Elwood could even work better as a distant counter user just for having such good speed and res stat, even better than Hrid, which I didn't cover in this particular comparisons. He could do that pretty well, but I don't want to throw out like distant counters on random 3 and 4 star units. As always, I tried to make things more of a budget situation. So yeah, that pretty much covers Hrid. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to give it a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and let me know if you guys have any cool ideas for Hrid, if you plan to use them in any way in the future, maybe team comp options. I know a lot of you guys want to use them with Gunthra, or if you already have some of the calves on the left side. If any of you guys have like stall, for instance, if anyone's built a stall, I would love to hear it. If anyone's built like Seth, guys, come out of the woodwork, please, let me see them. I do want to know those guys that have those horses built, because they really are. They're really cool. Anyways, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.